Hello and welcome back as we continue exploring AWS Route 53. In this lesson, we're going to focus on S3, or more specifically using an S3 bucket for a DNS failover endpoint. So over here on the Orion papers, let's click on S3 here, and let's just talk a little bit about what's going on. By using a failover routing policy in a Route 53 DNS record set, an S3 bucket can be used as a failover endpoint. This can provide an extremely reliable backup solution if your primary endpoint fails. And even though S3 should only be used for static web hosting, it gives you the opportunity to provide your users with some type of information until the primary endpoint is working again. So again, it could just be a simple notification saying, hey, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. We'll be back up and running shortly. And also, it is important just to understand that an S3 bucket can be used as a primary endpoint if you just want to host a simple static site. Now also, and this is extremely important, for a DNS record set to use an S3 bucket as an endpoint, the bucket name must be the same as the domain name. So if I have orionpapers.com and I want to use an S3 bucket as a failover endpoint, the bucket name also has to be orionpapers.com. So let's take a look at that. Over here in S3, I have already created a bucket called orionpapers.com. Inside that bucket, I have one file, which is an error.html file. And over here, I have already enabled static web hosting, which we should remember from the S3 section of this course, with the error.html document set as the index document. So the error HTML document will be the document that is served if this S3 bucket is used as a DNS endpoint. So switching back over here to Route 53, let's click on our hosted zone. And I do have my two record sets that I created in the last lesson. So I'm actually just going to go in here. I'm just going to delete those. I'll just get rid of them for argument's sake here. So now what I need to do is actually create two separate record sets, one for our primary endpoint and one for our secondary, or what's going to be our failover endpoint. So I can click on record set. We're going to leave this just blank, just orionpapers.com. I am going to use an alias, and I'm going to set this to the Elastic Load Balancer because this is again going to be our primary endpoint. And so we want that to be our Elastic Load Balancer. Now we're going to switch the routing policy from simple to failover. And here now you have to select between primary and secondary. This is going to be our primary record set. This is where we want all of our traffic to go when everything is healthy and working correctly. Now we do have to check evaluate target health because what it's going to do is that if and when Route 53 recognizes that the Elastic Load Balancer is offline or has failed, it will then default to our secondary record set. So now that I have the primary record set create, we'll click create here. Now again, I have to create my secondary record set. So again, I'll select alias, but this time, instead of selecting the Elastic Load Balancer, I'm going to select the orionpapers.com S3 bucket. I have to then change this over to failover. And then this time select secondary. So again, this is going to be our secondary record set or a failover record set if the primary fails, so if the Elastic Load Balancer fails in some capacity. Now for this, you don't have to evaluate target health, so that we can go ahead and click create. So there we have it. So now, as long as my Elastic Load Balancer is healthy, it's going to serve traffic to my Elastic Load Balancer and then to my EC2 instances. However, if the Elastic Load Balancer ever became unhealthy, it would then serve traffic to the S3 bucket and it would serve up that error.html document. And with that, we'll conclude this lesson. Thank you for watching. You may now move on.